Before you buy your next Honda motorcycle, you need to know the truth. Because not every Honda engine lives up to that legendary reputation for reliability. Some of them are so bulletproof they'll outlast you, your garage, and probably your grandkids. But a few others will drain your wallet faster than a gas tank on a track day. Honda's reputation for reliability is sacred in the motorcycle world. It's the reason millions of riders put their trust in that Red Wing badge. But what if I told you a few Honda engines quietly broke that trust? That even this engineering giant has a few skeletons hiding in its otherwise spotless garage. Today, we're counting down the 3 worst and 4 best Honda motorcycle engines to own. And I promise, some of these will surprise you. I'm talking about engines that earn cult followings for running 500,000 miles without breaking a sweat, and others that turn proud riders into part-time mechanics. We've gone through owner reports, mechanic logs, and real-world data from riders across the globe to find out which Honda engines truly live up to the legend and which ones deserve to be left behind. Whether you're shopping for your next bike or wondering if your current one's a hidden gem or a ticking time bomb, this one could save you thousands, and maybe a few long walks home. So strap on your helmet, because we're starting with the engines you should avoid at all costs. And trust me, one of these bad Hondas might just be sitting in your garage right now. Because even Honda, the brand we all trust to run forever, has a few engines that make you wonder if the engineers were having an off day. And the first one on this list is a prime example. The early DCT-era NC700 Twin sounded revolutionary when it launched in 2012. A low-revving, fuel-efficient parallel twin paired with Honda's new dual-clutch transmission. Finally, a motorcycle that promised car-like convenience with motorcycle simplicity. On paper, it was perfect. In reality, it was a mood killer. The 670cc Twin delivered smooth torque down low, but it ran out of breath so quickly it felt like the fun got strangled at half throttle. Twist the grip expecting a rush, and instead, you got a polite reminder to slow down. Owners were divided. Some swore by its economy, others swore at it. The automatic DCT version was especially problematic early on, with clutch packs wearing faster than expected and shift behavior that made the bike lurch unpredictably in traffic. Add to that the infamous low red line, barely above 6,000 RPM, and riders said it felt more like commuting in an appliance than riding a bike. One reviewer summed it up perfectly. It doesn't stall, it doesn't thrill, it just exists. But the real trouble was under the surface. Cold start issues plagued the first batches, and fuel mapping quirks made throttle response jerky at low speeds. Honda eventually patched some of the software, but the damage to the engine's reputation was done. It became known as the commuter's curse, reliable enough to last, but dull enough to make every ride feel like homework. What makes this one sting is that it wasn't a catastrophic failure, it was worse. It was mediocrity from a company famous for excellence. And for Honda fans, that felt like betrayal. Then there's the CB500 Twin from the late 90s and early 2000s. An engine that looked harmless but had a habit of turning calm Sunday rides into mechanical mystery shows. On paper, it was supposed to be the perfect middleweight, easy to maintain, light, and forgiving enough for beginners. But beneath its simple design hid an orchestra of rattles, vibrations, and oil weeps that never seemed to stop. Riders used to joke that the CB500 didn't have a red line, it had a rattle line, because that's where the noise started. The biggest offender was its cam chain tensioner. Honda went cheap on the design and it showed. After 20 or 30,000 miles, tensioners would weaken, chains would start slapping, and the engine would sound like a toolbox rolling down a flight of stairs. Add in carburetors that constantly drifted out of sync, and you had a bike that spent more time with its tank off than on the road. Some owners claimed they could fix the tensioner noise by replacing it with upgraded aftermarket parts, but most just learned to live with it. Earplugs included. Gearboxes were another weak point. Finding neutral was like winning the lottery, and misshifts were so common they felt baked into the design. You could baby it, you could service it religiously, but eventually, that metallic chatter would come back to remind you this engine was built to a price. It wasn't catastrophic, just carelessly underbuilt, which made it even more frustrating. For a company famous for refinement, the CB500 Twin felt rough, unpolished, and out of tune with Honda's usual perfection. It was a bike that did its job, but never with pride. And finally, taking the top spot on Honda's wall of shame is the VT750 Shadow engine, the motor that looked like it was born to cruise but lived to disappoint. When it first hit showrooms, riders fell for it instantly. It had the chrome, the stance, the sound, and that classic low-slung silhouette that made every rider feel like they were starring in their own road movie. But the love story ended the moment the key turned. Underneath that retro styling sat a 745cc V-twin that Honda tuned lean to meet early 2000s emissions rules, and that decision nearly cooked the engine's reputation. On warm days, shadows ran so hot that traffic lights turned into torture sessions. The rear cylinder sat directly beneath the seat, baking everything above it, including the rider. Carbureted models had a bad habit of sputtering on cold starts, while the fuel-injected versions developed an annoying hesitation right where you needed throttle the most. The exhaust note promised thunder, but what you got was a cough and a complaint. Then came the maintenance. Spark plugs buried behind frame rails, air filters hidden like state secrets, and oil changes that require contortionist-level access. It's the kind of engine that makes you swear out loud halfway through the service manual. The worst part? It fooled people. Many bought it believing it would have that effortless Honda reliability. Instead, it became the lazy twin. Dependable only in the sense that you could depend on it to overheat, stall, and test your patience. Even loyal Honda fans admit this one missed the mark completely. The VT750 Shadow was proof that sometimes, even the most trusted name in motorcycling can build a bike that's all show and no soul. If you've owned one of these bikes, you already know the pain, wondering how Honda could get it so wrong. But before you swear them off completely, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and keeps videos like this coming. Now, let's talk about the engines that made Honda legendary again. Coming in first on the comeback list is the ST1100 V4, a motor so overbuilt it feels like it was forged, not assembled. Honda designed it in the early 90s for riders who thought cross-country meant cross-continent, and it shows. The 1085cc liquid-cooled V4 was smooth, torquey, and so perfectly balanced it can idle on a dime at 800 RPM. The gear-driven cams sang their own mechanical symphony, and that sound, a faint metallic word that every touring rider knows, became its signature. What really made this engine special wasn't power, it was endurance. You could ride it for 10 hours, shut it off for 10 minutes, and it could fire right back up like nothing happened. Many have gone well past 200,000 miles with nothing more than routine maintenance. The shaft drive means no chain adjustments, and the cooling system was so efficient it practically shrugged at summer heat. Even the oil filters were easy to reach, like Honda's engineers actually wanted mechanics to enjoy their job for once. It's the kind of engine that doesn't just last, it bonds with you. One owner described his as a companion that never complains. That's what the ST1100 V4 does. It's not flashy, it's not loud, it's just quietly relentless. In a world obsessed with horsepower numbers, this one reminds you what real engineering looks like. It's not about speed or bragging rights, it's about trust. The kind that carries you across the country and still sounds new when you get there. Next up is the CBR600F's inline-four. The engine that proved reliability and performance don't have to be enemies. When it debuted, Honda called it the perfect balance between track aggression and daily usability. And for once, the marketing was right. The 599cc inline-four was silky at idle, furious at redline, and forgiving everywhere in between. It revved like a supersport, yet never felt fragile. Riders said it was the engine that refused to complain, and that might be the most accurate review ever written. The secret was Honda's obsessive attention to tolerance and cooling. Every bearing, every seal, every oil passage felt like it was machined with long life in mind. The valve train could take abuse from high RPM weekend rides and still stay in spec for tens of thousands of miles. Even neglected examples, bikes left in garages for years, often fired up with nothing more than a fresh battery and some clean fuel. And when you did push it, the CBR soundtrack, that precise high-pitched wail, reminded you why Honda ruled the 600 class for over a decade. It wasn't the fastest, it wasn't the flashiest, but it was the benchmark. The one that everyone else secretly measured against. The CBR 600F's engine gave riders freedom to ride hard, to commute, to race, and to trust that no matter what, the bike would just keep going. It's the kind of reliability that doesn't make headlines because it's too busy making memories. At number 2 is the XR650L single-cylinder thumper, the engine that refuses to die even when the rider does everything possible to kill it. Since the early 90s, this big air-cooled single has powered adventure bikes, dual sports, and countless off-road builds, and somehow, it's barely changed in 3 decades. That's not laziness, that's perfection. When you build something this tough, you don't want to mess with it. It's a 644cc air-cooled engine with a dry sump lubrication system that keeps it alive even when oil levels get dangerously low. The cooling fins are massive, the internals are beefy, and the compression ratio is just low enough to make it forgiving when riders forget about premium fuel in the middle of nowhere. This is the bike that crosses deserts, climbs mountains, and rides home again, still idling with that slow, stubborn heartbeat. Mechanics tell stories of XR650Ls that have been flipped, flooded, starved of oil, and still run like they're daring you to try harder. It's not refined. It vibrates like a tractor, rattles your mirrors, and hums so loud at highway speed you start negotiating with it for mercy. But it never quits. Change the oil, check the valves, and it'll take you places adventure bikes twice the price wouldn't dare go. That's why riders call it the mountain mule. Slow, stubborn, loyal, and impossible to stop. In a world obsessed with gadgets and electronics, this engine is the antidote. Pure mechanical honesty built to outlive the trail itself. And finally, taking the #1 spot, the crown jewel of Honda engineering is the Goldwings Flat 6 engine, known by riders as the Eternal engine. It's the mechanical definition of smooth. Turn the key, and it doesn't roar to life, it hums awake, as if it's been idling since the day you bought it. The horizontally opposed layouts keep the weight low and the balance perfect, so even a 1,000-pound touring bike feels graceful in motion. At idle, you can balance a coin on the tank. At speed, it feels like flight. The early Goldwing engines, starting with the GL1000, were already impressive, but it was the later Flat 6 that sealed the legend. Every element, from the counterbalancers to the cooling system, was designed for forever. The shaft drive never complains, the gear whine becomes a lullaby, and oil changes feel more like rituals than maintenance. There are Goldwings out there with 500,000 miles on their original engines, still running like day one. Mechanics have been saying about these, you don't fix them, you just change the fluids and keep going. It's more than reliability, it's serenity. Long-distance riders talk about how it transforms the road. The hum of the engine becomes the soundtrack of freedom, the kind of peace that only comes from knowing your machine will never let you down. The Goldwing Flat 6 isn't just an engine, it's a promise that no matter how far you ride, you'll always make it home. Every brand has its bad moments, but Honda's good ones tend to last a lifetime. The engines we covered today prove that reliability isn't luck, it's design. Some Hondas test your patience, but the great ones remind you why you started riding in the first place. If this video helped you, hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments which Honda engine earned your trust and which one broke it. Because when Honda builds it right, you don't just own a motorcycle, you own a legend.